General Motors. Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. Back with another video a day until this channel hits 100K. I just did a tow test on this GMC, the same test that I do with my miles per gallon loops all around Phoenix here. Run all around the 101 down to the 202. It's about a 90-mile loop. And I, for the life of me, can't understand what is going on with this diesel. So this combination that I was towing for this MPG test, the RZR Pro S, this is the 4-seater, weighs 2,409 pounds. The U-Haul trailer here weighs in at 3,155 pounds. So all in, we are 5,646 pounds on this whole tow rig setup. Now, no, this is not going to be the craziest thing that you can tow, but this is pretty much what I tow all of the time, is things like this in that kind of weight range. If you start adding a camper or an enclosed car trailer where you have an enclosed face, I suspect these results obviously to be much worse in terms of aerodynamics. But let's talk about how this performed. The overall distance here, fender to floor, is 40 3/4, and on the rear we are 38 3/4. So a 2-inch drop when you're towing something modestly heavy isn't really all that terrible. Now, I always tow, and probably have for the last, I don't know, 6-7 years, with this WaySafe hitch. This actual hitch has not been replaced. It has the built-in tongue weight indicator, and with this setup, it was coming in anywhere between like 600 to 700 pounds of tongue weight. With this trailer being around 5,600 pounds, I was well within that 10 to 15% of tongue weight that you're aiming for. When you're towing many different kinds of trailers, to be able to set the hitch height so that the trailer itself is level makes a world of difference. So again, highly recommend WaySafe hitches. I will drop them in the description down below. Okay, so DEF. I've actually recorded this several times over because it's getting really hard to make heads and tails of how wildly crazy inaccurate these numbers are. It's so all over the place. DEF is definitely annoying. I said when I first bought the truck, I didn't care about DEF. And boy, did I mean it, because when I first bought the truck, it was 2,564 miles before I got to a half a tank of DEF. And I decided when I bought this truck, it holds 5.3 gallons of DEF. So when it gets to half, I'll buy these 2.5-gallon jugs from Costco for $13.99, and I'll just fill it up, top it off. That way I never have to think about DEF. That means that I was getting 1,026 miles per gallon of DEF. At that point, I just didn't care. I viewed it like oil change type stuff, like it's a consumable, whatever. But it gets crazy. And I've watched videos. Traveling Tall actually just made a video recently sharing how his towing experience had just been abysmal with DEF calculations. The truck just can't figure out for the life of it what it's doing, how much it's using, and it's just a huge hot mess. I wasn't really experiencing that kind of stuff, but I will say that when I took my trip from Phoenix to Boulder, Colorado, which that is a haul. I wasn't loading any, there was no trailer, nothing. It was just me and my truck and a suitcase going up through the mountains and hauling 80 miles an hour. And on that trip, I brought one 2.5-gallon jug, thinking at that point, well, I'm getting 1,000 miles per gallon. 2.5 gallons will be fine. I ended up going through 5 gallons on that trip, and I got stuck at a gas station that didn't have it at the pump, and I had to spend $26.99 for a 2.5-gallon jug. And that was just like, felt like highway robbery, because it was. So that was when I was like, all right, so I guess on these road trips, I need to stock up on some DEF, keep it in the truck. That's a little more annoying than what I thought. Now I'm gonna be clear, I still love this truck. I have no desire to get rid of it. I will double down on the fact that if I can delete the DEF or the whole DPF system at some point, I will, because this is just crazy. And it seems like if GM could push an update, which by the way, they pushed an update recently, updating the truck so that when you double tap the lock button or unlock button, you can remotely roll down your windows, which that's always been a thing. But now it turns on the fan to circulate air. I was like, well, why do you just rolled the window? Who cares? But why not fix the DEF problem in these trucks with an over-the-air update? Because what's going on here is that I made a video recently talking about how I started putting DEF in every few tanks, and I still wasn't all that annoyed by it, because honestly, I just didn't really think about it. I was like, whatever. Still $13.99, not a huge deal. But looking at this, I was very curious. Now that I have the Banks iDash, I wanted to run some tests. And I'm gonna have some videos coming up in the next few days as I sift through some of this data. But the data that I'm looking at now is pretty insane. So now what's happening is I went from getting 1,000 miles per gallon of DEF. So I started looking at the numbers right before I ran this tow test. I topped off on March 26th to 100%. And before I started my test yesterday, I was down to 65%. That means that I was only getting 189 miles per gallon of DEF. Now I have put 35-inch tires on the truck. It's sitting up a little bit higher, but the gas mileage hasn't really suffered all that much. So apparently it's using DEF for making up the difference in what it's not using in fuel. It's crazy to me, 189 miles per gallon of DEF. Okay, well, maybe because I modified the truck, we can make those arguments. I also drive pretty heavy-footed, so maybe that's part of it. Okay, to be fair, I did a regen before I started my tow test, so technically that would have, I forced a regen with the Banks iDash. So that 189 miles per gallon number could be flawed because I did a forced regen on it in between there. But last night, no regens, just straight towing. I got 247 miles per gallon of DEF. So these numbers, pretty weird that I got, I don't know, it's weird. But what's weirder is the truck. I can't make heads or tails of it. The truck is even worse. This truck can calculate within a tenth of an MPG with diesel consumption. But the truck for DEF consumption, again, I hard calculated based on the percentage of DEF available in the tank that I was getting 247 miles per gallon. The truck, based on its calculations and based on the mileage, I was able to correlate this back down. The truck thought it was only getting 65 miles per gallon of DEF. So that's why when you start towing with these trucks, you'll see people complain saying that they start driving and the truck says they only have 200 miles till empty and they're full of DEF. So the truck just has no clue what is going on with its own DPF system. I don't understand how GM can't figure this out, whether they need to push a software update or if there's a recall on the entire DEF system. I don't know, but this is a problem because it just creates a miserable ownership experience. When you're driving like that and it's throwing these things saying you only got 200 miles left, but you're looking and you're like, well, I got 3/4 of a tank. You can't figure it out. And if you're towing long distance and you're between gas stops, that could be a real problem. And it just creates unnecessary concern for those who own these Duramax diesels. This is the LZ0. They've got to push a software update. They've got to fix how this truck is figuring out its DEF usage and possibly even change how they're actually utilizing the DEF in general because it seems crazy high. Now, it's not all bad, being that I have no idea what my actual DEF usage is other than knowing that it's a lot. I did actually manage to get pretty decent MPG. As far as I'm concerned, it wasn't all that bad. 95 miles, I ran an average speed of about 70. For the most part, cruise control was actually set at 75. I managed to get 13.4 MPG on diesel. Lord knows what I was getting on DEF, and that is pretty much right at the top of the neck there. I'm gonna have some videos coming up in the next coming days as I sift through some of this data because I have a ton. I gotta go out and do a little more driving unloaded, compare it to the driving I did loaded. I'm gonna come back with some real data, but I'm gonna tell you right off the rip, this is really wild. And the experience towing last night, the truck tows fantastic. I could not want a better truck in terms of how it felt towing a 6,000 pound load with 600 to 700 pounds of tongue weight. It handled fantastic. I couldn't want a better truck. Except for the fact I have no idea how much it's consuming of a consumable fluid that is very critical to the operation of the truck, and the truck has no idea what's going on. Mind-blowing. Not surprised, but at this point, I'm just happy that I have a truck that doesn't have a motor that's in pieces like the GM 6.2, the Toyota V6, a handful of Fords, and Lord knows what other trucks are blowing up that nobody knows about at this point. It's just, the whole market of new trucks now is just super unreliable in terms of something. They've all got something. So with that said, thank you guys very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel. I'll see you guys next time. I've got some videos and some data to sift through because this is interesting.